Welcome back to the AR Files presented by 9-Hole Reviews. In today's episode, we're going to be having a look at barrel twist rate and running through both what the term means, as well as which option you should be selecting for your 5.56 AR. Choosing the appropriate twist will ensure your rifle is as accurate as possible and truly able to stretch out and collect hits at distance. But before we can get into twist rate specifically, we first need to all be on the same page with how a bullet actually flies through the air. And I want you to think of the bullet in flight like a quarterback's throw, with the bullet spiraling in order to remain stabilized in a nice straight flight path. If there isn't this nice spin, the oblong shape of the bullet will cause wobble and yawing, resulting in the projectile flying not so straight or otherwise deviating from its intended path. So, getting the perfect spin on the bullet leaving the rifle is extremely important to accuracy. And so how is this accomplished? Well, through selecting the correct twist rate. See, twist rate refers to the rifling inside the barrel, and not all barrels have the same rifling pattern. Some cause the bullet to spin more, others less. You've probably seen twist rate on barrels listed as one of the following: 1 in 7, 1 in 8, or 1 in 9. This designation identifies how many inches of barrel it takes for the rifling to force the bullet to make one full rotation. So, 1 in 7, 7 inches of barrel before the bullet makes a full rotation in the rifling, and so on. What this amounts to is that the lower the second number, the faster the twist, or the more spin the barrel will impart on the bullet. And the larger the second number, the less rotations the bullet will be forced to complete before exiting the barrel. But what is the optimal amount of spin for the 5.56? Why do we have different twists in the first place? Well, over time, the 5.56 projectile has been updated and altered, with many options getting longer and heavier, and as such, the twist has had to adapt and become faster and faster to account for these adjustments. The quick and dirty rule is the longer and heavier the projectile, the faster the twist needs to be in order to keep it stabilized. And while commercially today, we see the 3 aforementioned primary twist designations to choose from to accomplish this task, the original AR-15 barrel was actually much slower. Let's rewind back to the late 1950s. The original M16 rifle barrel utilized a 1 in 14 twist rate, extremely slow in terms of twist by modern standards for this cartridge, and in fact, too slow, as it was determined that the 1 in 14 wasn't able to effectively stabilize the 55 grain projectile fired from the M193 and M196 tracer in all weather conditions. It only took a few years for the twist rate to be made faster with the switch to the 1 in 12 rate with the rollout of the M16A1. And then, by the mid-1980s, the military moved to the 1 in 7 twist with the advent of the M16A2 and the M855 cartridge with its increased projectile weight of 62 grains, along with the M856 tracer. Now, there is some debate around whether or not optimal stabilization for the 5.56 projectile is actually a good thing or not. Effectively, the argument for less stabilization goes something like this. If we can have quote-unquote just enough stabilization to get the projectile to impact its intended target, that would mean there's a higher likelihood for the projectile to yaw and then fragment when it hits the target, causing a more devastating terminal wound. This was part of the conversation during the introduction of the M16A2 in the 80s. Since that time, though, the military has used and continued to use the 1 in 7 twist. So make of that what you will. Now back to how you can practically apply this information to your rifle. Well, if you look at 5.56 ammunition today, almost all of the projectiles run between 55 and 77 grains. Frequently circulated on gun forums, you can commonly find a nice little Venn diagram that tells you which barrel twist to choose based on which projectiles you intend to shoot. It looks something like this. The 1 in 9 twist, optimized for 45 to 69 grain projectiles. The 1 in 8, optimized for 55 to 75 or even 77 grain projectiles. The 1 in 7, optimized for 62 to 77 grain projectiles. But is this chart completely accurate? Well, it suggests that the shorter, lighter bullets fired from a 1 in 7 barrel spun quickly have a chance to actually degrade accuracy. And while there may be some truth to this, as in perhaps a paper group might grow by an inch or a bit more when spinning a 55 grain projectile extra quick, you can absolutely still shoot 55 grain projectiles through 1 in 7 twist barrels to great effect. Despite the fact that we normally only shoot 55 grain ball ammunition, not something we'd consider match grade by any sense of the word, we are still able to collect impacts out on distance targets of 500 plus yards using these through 1 in 7 twist barrels almost across the board. Conversely, we have noticed that if our barrel doesn't impart enough spin to stabilize the longer, heavier projectiles, there is usually a very obvious, incredible loss of accuracy, far more than is measured within the confines of a bullseye target, and can make the rifle ineffective at range with those projectiles. But why even debate a 1 in 7 if the 1 in 8 basically covers the full gamut of commercial ammunition from lightweight ball blaster ammo up through what we believe is the ideal long-range projectile, the 77? Well, this comes down to economies of scale and the popularity of the clones of military barrels to a decent degree, at least in our opinion. Frankly, 1 in 8 twist barrels are just much more rare from a general commercial manufacturer perspective and are usually only found on rifles marketed as having precision barrels. For example, it's extremely rare to find a 1 in 8 cold hammer forged barrel, one designed for longevity and durability. If you can find one, fantastic. The 1 in 8 twist should cover most projectiles, save some specialty extra long variants. At the end of the day, most every barrel has a little bit of its own character. Some barrels will simply like a certain projectile more than others. Longer barrels pushing faster velocities can sometimes get away with a slower twist while still stabilizing the longer, heavier projectiles, so on and so forth, etc., etc. But when rubber meets the road, in our opinion, if you actually intend to shoot your rifle at range, preserving the ability to stabilize and shoot 77 grain matched projectiles should be a maximum priority, as opposed to being able to shoot a stupid accurate group with a projectile that will lose a good amount of that paper accuracy as it's shot out at distance thanks to the varying effects of wind, for example. Not to mention, 77 grain projectiles can also be used to supplement at closer ranges to increase terminal ballistics of shorter barreled platforms. See our episode on barrel length and velocities to learn more on that. So, unless you have a specialty build in mind or specific secret sauce projectile that you want to try and optimize for, a 1 in 7 will suit the vast majority of users perfectly fine and preserve the capability for that rifle to be used to take extended distance shots should the time ever become relevant. Do you agree with our opinion on the optimal barrel twist? Let us know in the comments below. And until next time, we'll see you on the range.
716, this is Steel 96, 4 Vic, 8 packs, red con 1, green to green. How copy, over?
Steel 96, this is 716, roger, over. 16, Steel 91, 1 pack, green, over. This is 716, roger, over.
16, 92, 1 Victor, 2 packs, red con 1, over.